Hello and welcome to Let's Get Real. And for some reason, the universe didn't want to do my beginning. So there's a reason for everything in life, but we will just move in. Today on my show, I have this lovely woman who she's just, there's certain things that really bring us to people. And so for this woman here, if you have symptoms in yourself that you're fighting and your body's working against you, but your body desperately is trying to get your attention, when do you listen? Do you have to fight through the time when you all of a sudden finding that yourself, that you're tired, or something even goes even worse, where there's so many things that happen in your body's telling you things. And so many people today are exhausted, burned out, anxious, inflamed, disconnected, and searching for answers. And anybody knows that is me. I understand this more than you can ever realize. Yet nobody is asking the deeper question, what is your body trying to tell you? So today's guest believes that healing doesn't start by silencing symptoms. It starts by finding, listening, and learning what your body's doing. Welcome to Let's Get Real. It's where we stop pretending everything is fine, because that's what we a lot of times we do, and we start having the conversations that truly matter. I'm host Glenda Kroll, an empowerment strategist, and today's conversation may completely change the way you look at your health, your healing, and your own body. Joining us today is Sarah Dawkins, a holistic health and healing coach, international speaker, a registered nurse, and an author of Heal Yourself, multi-award winning entrepreneur, and a host of uplifting podcast, Mind Body Medicine for Self-Healers. With over 20 years of experience with conventional medicine combined with her own powerful self-healing journey through multiple chronic health challenges, Sarah now helps people find the undercover address of root causes behind their own symptoms. So let's not go any further now to welcome Sarah to our stage. Hello, Sarah. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
Thank you. I'm great. Thank you. How are you?
Good, thank you. Like I said, when it's real, things happen, and my intro didn't go on, so it's real. That's how we live here.
For sure.
Thank you for joining us. What you talk about and what you teach is what I've lived through most of my life. So this is a topic that is very dear to my heart. And I'm thrilled to have you here with such an incredible background that you do have, and learn a little bit more. But let's start, first of all, of diving in of how did you get to this point? What happened in your own life that made you start looking at things in a different way?
I was challenged at work in the hospital by another nurse. I was 41 years old, raised by a nurse, went into nursing myself to try and help people in their vulnerable times. And I was challenged by a nurse colleague about puppy vaccinations. I was going to take my dog to the vet when I left work to get its puppy vaccinations, and she challenged me on it. And that sent me down into lots and lots of research on the internet on what's vaccinations all about, what's in them versus what else is there if we don't follow the medical model. And I just went literally months and months and months, head in the computer and books every day, researching, which made me challenge my own beliefs around what I'd learned from my family and what I was taught at nursing school and what I learned in the hospital about what healing takes. And challenging those beliefs, I realized that I was just following the patterns of my family and their beliefs without any conscious awareness. And it's when I was challenged, I suddenly became conscious. What do I believe? Why do I believe that? Where has that come from? Mm-hmm. And does that belief still work for me now? And I realized it didn't. And that's when I started to make huge changes in my life. Started healing my mind, body, and soul. Healed a whole slew of health problems, but ended up in a deep, dark depression. And that was really the pivotal moment of the change in my life from nursing for 20 years into what else can I do to help people. But rather than to keep them in the medical model and sick, I wanted to help them to step away from that, step away from pharmaceuticals, and help them to help themselves.
So you had to go through your own challenges as well in your own body to start, during that time, were you running around to all these medical professionals for your own self?
I back and forward to the doctor, with chronic health problems, psoriasis, eczema, acid reflux. I lived on steroid cream and magnesium trisilicate for the acid reflux for decades. And then chronic pain, just taking pharmaceuticals for chronic pain. And then candida, and I finally ended up with I realized I had PTSD. I went through that dark night of the soul. My thyroid became underactive. I burnt out my adrenal glands with all the stress. What else? There was something else. Oh, and bulimia nervosa along the way.
So through that time, you were searching. Like, what did you do when you had this situation with candida?
So I did some research to find out. This was like way back at the start of my journey. So I didn't understand the metaphysical aspects of it. I was just around what can I do physically, because it was so early on in my journey. So with the candida, I stopped taking sugar in tea and coffee. I cut out bread and potatoes and carbohydrates, literally, so that because the sugar that I was eating was feeding the candida. And I did a bit of yogurt and coconut oil application, and a lot of love. I had to come back and love myself for who I was, because I wasn't a lover of my own self at the time. I had a lot of things going on.
I think you just said that's a mic drop moment of how many women actually love themselves. It's really a sad thing. You look in the mirror, and instead of seeing that beautiful essence of the woman you are in front of the mirror, we're sitting there, and we all do it. Like, I'm not pretty enough, or my thighs, my stomach. Like, we go through all of this and pulling ourselves apart. And we just need to stop that. Like, at what point can we stop? Like, the nice things today, as you see, is models are now all different sizes. You don't have to be a stick anymore to be a model, and which really changes the whole thing. But we have to really start looking at ourselves, because what happens is it really does exhausts our whole insides. We talked to, you just mentioned about the adrenals and how it happens from all the exhaustion that we live through. So what you started down that journey of starting to, and what point did you get that you thought that you were starting to heal yourself, and then you just finally decided that you could start helping others work through that same ideas?
It was as I was coming out of that dark depression. And what I found was I actually intuitively started practicing mindfulness and gratitude when I was out walking the dogs. And it was months, maybe 6 months down the line, before I even realized that what I was doing had a name. But I kind of intuitively did it. And then I started doing a bit of meditation. And I first did the sitting on the floor going, and then there was this negative voice. And I'm like, I don't think meditation's the thing for me, because, there's this voice, I can't shut it up. But I found guided meditations, and that really helped me to, first of all, find peace in myself. So it was like 5 minutes a day. That's all I could do. And then I started looking at, can I do longer? And what my husband said, what do you want to do? What do you want in your life? Because I knew I needed to leave the hospital, but I didn't know at the time what I needed to do. So he said, why don't you set up your business, a business? So I did as a nurse entrepreneur, because I was Sarah the nurse. Who was I if I wasn't Sarah the nurse? And I won awards and I was very successful in that business, but I still had to sign that nursing register every year. And that, although it felt better than working in the hospital, because I was subcontracting for different companies, I was still the nurse. So I still had that conflict around my work. And I don't know how I found out about coaching, whether I read something online or saw something in a post on the social media, I don't know. And I thought, maybe this is what I need to do. So I bought a coaching course, went down to London, because I was in the UK at the time, went down to London, did this coaching course. I'm like, this is what I need to do. This is how I can help people to help themselves. And once I realized that, I then surrendered my nursing license, and I actually closed my first business down and set up what is now my coaching business and speaking business, because I realized this is where I need to be. Yes, I've helped people through my nursing career and through the work as an entrepreneur, but this is actually what I'm meant to be doing, helping people to help themselves.
I love it. Today, there's so many people that are functioning every day while silently exhausted. And this is chronic stress is actually doing problems and doing more damage beneath the surface of the body. How do you start by helping people in something like that? Where do you begin?
When clients come to me, I ask me to tell me about themselves. So I hold space for them. And most people start with what kind of a childhood they had, and then children and jobs. And just holding space for those people, whether it's 5 minutes or 15 minutes, however long they need. Sometimes that's all they need. Just somebody to be heard, for somebody to listen to them, to be validated, to know that it's okay to feel what they feel, because a lot of people have missed out on that. And when they just are heard and validated and seen, that in itself is so therapeutic. But from those conversations, little red flags fly in my head when sometimes they mention different things. So I'll ask them, can you tell me a bit more about that? Who was involved and how did it make you feel and what happened? And then they start to tie bits of their story of now and their diagnosis or their symptoms into the story that happened in their childhood. And when they make that link, I can see it often, but I don't tell them because they need to see it themselves. So in asking them for more information, I help guide them to see what I'm seeing. And when they see that, the little aha, like in their heads, just that is what I live for.
I love that. And that's so important. What happens when physically and emotionally, when someone lives in survival mode for years?
Oh, we just burn out. We feel tired, anxious, brain fog. We can have body rashes. We can have chronic pain. There's just so many symptoms. Even things like hives are a sign of a long-standing stress living in survival mode. And it's about seeing what's going on in their lives that's producing the symptoms, because our symptoms are all messages.
Yeah.
And Western medicine seeks to quiet them, whereas holistic health seeks to understand the message, to decode the message, and then we can work with the body to repair that message so the body doesn't need to send that message anymore.
So how important is for the nervous system to regulate when it comes to healing?
Oh, massive. So many people, I was one of those people too, walking around every day with a totally dysregulated nervous system and not even knowing that was a cause of some of the symptoms. So it's helping people to understand, like a lot breathing. We all breathe, But how many people ever become conscious of how they're breathing?
Yeah.
I worked with my father, and some of his respiratory rates was like 50 and 60 a minute.
Wow.
And the normal respiratory rate is 16 to 20, but then it could drop to 20 to 30. And I never made him conscious of what he was doing, because it was, he wasn't a well man anyway. But it's about understanding how we're breathing, where we're breathing, because a lot of us breathe from the top of our lungs rather than take those deep belly breaths.
Yeah.
And all it takes to regulate a nervous system is just a few deep, slow belly breaths. It has a huge impact on our nervous system, which helps to calm us down. And in doing so, helps us to feel a lot better.
So true. What are some of the subtle warning signs that the nervous system takes in the body if you're overloaded long before the disease or something fully comes out?
Symptoms: anxiety, stress, brain fog, fatigue, tiredness, can be joint pains, gastrointestinal upset, headaches, migraines, skin rashes. There's so many different signs and symptoms, and they can all start really small, and we're like, oh, it's just a rash, I'll put some cream on it. It's just a headache, I'll take a pill. It's just an upset stomach, I'll take another pill. Whether we take a pharmaceutical or a more natural remedy, we're still treating a symptom rather than looking at why have we got that symptom? What is the message in that symptom?
It's the unfortunate part of it all that most people don't seem to acknowledge the symptoms until it's at quite a high level, right?
Because we're so dissociated from our body. Our modern world, there's screens and scrolling and phone conversations and television and buying things and going out and drinking, and all of these things are taking us outside of our body, and we actually need to come back in and listen. So a lot of us miss those whispers, if you like, of the body when it's a little bit off and it's sending that little tiny bit of a niggly headache or an upset tummy, and we just think it's nothing, I'll take a pill or I'll ignore it, rather than go, oh, I wonder what my body's trying to tell me with that headache or that upset tummy.
Yeah, I used to say that you start with when you might stub your toe and you don't realize until you break your leg, because you're being told something, but we don't connect into it enough. And
Absolutely.
so do you believe that the emotional stress of unresolved trauma can physically manifest, excuse me, in the body?
Totally. And when we say trauma, we can look at it as a capital T trauma, like a physical abuse, sexual abuse, mental abuse. But we can also look at it as a little t trauma, like being teased, being left out, feeling, being made to feel less than, shouted at, or feeling unloved, not receiving the love. And it's not so much about whether it's the capital T or the lower T trauma. It's about how we hold that, our perception as that child, and what we make that mean, and how we hold it. So we're all holding on to trauma. Some people can be as affected from a little t trauma as other people from a big T trauma, and vice versa. It's that holding on as that child that we were when it happened, and what we made that mean. And it's the story that we tell ourselves about what we made that mean that manifests into symptoms. Because for the vast majority of us, we've made that story mean, I'm not good enough, I'm unworthy, I'm not worthy of love, I'm not confident, I'm ugly, I'm fat, I'm too short, I'm too tall, I'm clumsy. And we've made all these stories up based on what we were told as children, rightly or wrongly. I don't want to apportion any blame to anybody, because at the end of the day, the people that were telling us those things that we took on board and held as trauma were trying to do the best they could at that time with the skills and the knowledge that they had.
Right.
There's no blame, there's nobody's fault. It just was.
And I think that's the huge lesson in life for me personally, is to always explain to people, like, blaming doesn't get you anywhere. We have to learn to forgive and then move on, because that way, because we're holding that bad energy into us, right?
Yeah.
Which is causing more problems, because if you're holding on to what was, and you're holding on now to the anger that you're holding on to now for whatever amount of years, and it could be 20, 30, 50 years, what a lot of people do, what good is that doing to us?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like wanting to hurt somebody else because they've hurt you, but you're holding on to it. So it's actually your desire to want to hurt somebody else is actually hurting you, because there's somebody else that hurt you or said something or did something, quite likely has no memories of the incident and has moved on with their lives, but yet we are still holding on to that as a trauma and the meaning that we gave it as that little child.
So crazy. How much of critical illness do you believe is connected to unresolved emotional stress, like, so that are suppressed emotions, or do we live it out in ailments?
No, I think the critical illness as well comes from the critical illness doesn't just happen. The critical
Mhm.
illness builds up over 20, 30, 40, sometimes 50 years. So we see somebody with an acute diagnosis of something, heart attack, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's,
Right.
cancer, and we think, it's there's the diagnosis today, but actually that's been building up all those years before, because
Mhm.
of quite often something that we're still holding on to, or a thought or a belief, or even a part of our lifestyle that's not conducive to good health.
Right. So, somebody, like, I've always felt this, like there's usually an underlying reason why people are having these issues. Like, cancer isn't something that just happens. It could be living a lifestyle, or living in a, even whether it's a business or relationship or something that they're not happy in, and
Yes.
inside they're fighting it off.
Yes, absolutely. There's something not right, and cancer is the message expressed in the body, because the body's expressed lots of little health problems along the way, and they've not been listened to, or they've been silenced with medicines, or they've been ignored. So the body then has to start shouting, and then has to start screaming, hey, listen to me, something's really going on that needs attention here. And cancer is just a message at the end of the day.
Wow, so true. You often talk about root cause healing. Can you explain the difference between symptom management and actually addressing the root cause?
Of course. So root cause healing is holistic healing. So we're looking for what is the root cause of that symptom? Why did that body express cancer? Why has somebody got a thyroid problem? Why has somebody else developed eczema or psoriasis? And when we find the root cause, we can deal with that. So root cause healing well, I'll go with my thyroid. I healed an underactive thyroid. It was because partly my body needed to detoxify somewhat, but also because I wasn't speaking what I was thinking. I
Mm,
didn't like to upset people. I didn't want to cause conflict. So rather than causing conflict externally, I caused conflict internally with myself by swallowing my words, by not speaking out. And that is linked to an underactive thyroid. It's like saying, well, what's the point? Well, why should I bother? I'm not going to say that, which affected my thyroid. So when
I think we just froze for a second. We're going to hold a space for a moment until Sarah comes back to us. But, too often we do take our challenges and we internally hold them in. And, from through the years, I have watched people who suffer inside in silence. And it's during that time that we actually, it starts expressing itself, and it does come out one way or another. And we need to start learning that, our voice does matter. And for that time, what we need to do is learning within ourselves what is really important to us, learning to accept ourselves, who we are, and knowing that we are good enough, we are enough, and we can move forward. But when we allow the urges of allowing others to take us down, to hold our silence, it's got to come out some way or other. And just like Sarah just said, what ends up happening is it comes through the body and it manifests in another way. So one of the most important things that we have to learn to do within ourselves is to somehow go down into ourselves. And that can be through meditation, and that can be for talking, finding someone who will allow to hold space, but getting inside of acknowledging what's going on in your own body. Now, hi, Sarah. Thank you.
I'm sorry. The internet just disappeared. Sorry.
It's all good. That's what happens. It's okay. I'm just saying about how often that we just hold things inside of us because, we don't feel good enough or strong enough. And then when somebody says something, or you're, whether, sometimes you work in a business where you have a boss or a partner or something, and you're not getting your words out or your opinions or ideas, and you keep shoving all these things down, something's got to be happening inside of our body where things start to show up. And then if you're not aware enough in your own body, because awareness is really one of the most important ingredients in life, right?
Yeah.
Then what happens?
Then you manifest symptoms. And your body, your mind, your subconscious mind will choose the symptoms that it needs to express in your body to help guide you to what the problem is.
So how does somebody realize what's going on? Like, okay, so they've been holding things in and they have symptoms, but maybe the symptoms are connected to, like you're holding your breath, you're not speaking your true self, and things start happening. Little things happen. We sort of go, life is very busy. We don't listen. How do we start to listen to start to figure out what is happening within ourselves?
We need to take time out and just sit and just be, because most of the time we're just doing and we're not being. And we need to be able to be quiet and listen. And for some people, they can we can all ask. Not everybody's into, it sounds a bit too woo for some people, but if you just sit and ask your body, what is it that you need? Or what message do you have for me? We all actually really know, but quite often we're not ready to acknowledge that knowledge or hear that message. So we sit with it and continue with those symptoms, because to acknowledge the message and to do the work can be really challenging. And a lot of people, like I always wanted to be a nurse and didn't ever see myself not being in the hospital, being a nurse. I thought I'd live and die in the hospital, literally. So for me to actually realize I needed to step away from the hospital, it took me several months to go through that journey. And then I finally woke up one day and went, oh my God, I actually need to leave the hospital. I didn't ever think I need to leave nursing because that wasn't in my mindset at the time, but I knew I had to leave the hospital. And it's like, what am I going to do? What job could I possibly do if I walk away from the hospital? I can still be a nurse, but I don't want to be a community nurse. I was a critical care nurse. And so it was like, well, what do I do? Who am I if I'm not in the hospital nursing? And that unfamiliar is challenging because you're stepping into an unknown. Whereas when you're still in the same situation and you change nothing, you still manifest the symptoms, but it's a familiar, uncomfortable because you've got the symptoms. To step out of that into an unfamiliar and uncomfortable and potentially challenging situation is too much for some people. So they stay in the familiar, uncomfortable.
Right. And that was my next question I was going to talk to you about, is how often that we could be living in a life that is no longer aligned to who we truly are.
Yes. And that's what I did for a while, because I didn't know what I could step out into. So I lived with symptoms and overwhelm and anxiety and burnout in that job, because, well, who was I if I wasn't doing that job? That my whole Sarah was a nurse in the hospital. And that again, that led me to, well, who is Sarah if she's not a nurse? And I couldn't answer that for a while because I didn't know who I was. Because a lot of us go through life and somebody says you should dress like this, or you shouldn't say that, or you should be like this, or that group of people only do that, and this group of people only do this. And you layer on identities and personalities to fit in with the people that you're around. And when you step away from those people and you start unpeeling all these layers, it can often have been decades. And when you peel them back, like, well, who am I underneath all these layers if I take them all away? And I didn't know. I had to go back to, what did I like as a child before I started piling on all these layers and becoming a different person? And then I had to start trying new things. Well, who am I now? Because that little Sarah's still in there. And, you know, some of the things that she liked will still be there. But what, you know, where were we? 40 years on, who could Sarah be now?
It's really it's like a full circle. And I always say life is a circle. One thing affects the other thing. You know, your life, when you're happy, you know, there's all different, there's pros and there's cons. What if we could only see the parts that really make us feel good? Why can't we just keep on adding on to that, instead of what we do is we start looking at the things that we don't want and we seem to add on to that.
We're our own best critic.
Or our own best enemy.
Yes.
Right? Is healing only physical, or does it also involve emotional, mental, and spiritual transformation?
It's all of it. And those are my 4 pillars of health and healing. And most people think it's physical, and I did, because I was raised in that medical model. So my first healing was nutrition, hydration, sleep, and movement or exercise. And that they'll all help. And every pillar, the mental, the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual, anything you do in any one of those pillars, well, everything's going to help. But because healing needs to be holistic, because we're not just a body, we are a mind, a body, a soul. We are not just a heart, we are a heart within a body that's connected to lungs, that's connected to arteries, that's connected to muscles and joints, and everything is so interconnected that healing has to be holistic. So we have to address the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. And we're all more into one of those pillars than we are into some of the others. And it's where we're lacking the most. So what the pillar that's got the least of our attention, that's where we need to start putting a little bit more attention. And there's a saying that I heard that I really love and use with clients is, a little bit of something is better than a lot of nothing. So let's find the area that you need to do more work in, and let's pick one thing, and you're going to do a little bit of that, but more over time.
So, where do you direct people to begin when there is something going on within them? Because something makes them reach out to you. All of a sudden, there's something that's starting to maybe they haven't found help in the areas that they looked, or they start realizing that there's something that isn't right. They start, understanding it. Where do you start them?
I tend to ask them to give me tell me about their life and hold that space for them, and help them to be seen, heard, and validated. But then as I'm talking to them, I'll ask them questions. What do you think that meant? What did you make that mean? How have you held that in your life? How is that showing up in your life now from what you made it mean when you were a child? So I'm asking them questions all the time to get them to think about their own beliefs around what's happened and how they're holding it, and how it's impacting their life now. And sometimes I'll ask them out directly. And I did recently to one lady, and I said, and what do you think you need to do to heal this? And she was, she came to me incredibly breathless, and it had developed a few months ago. She was normally fit and well. And she went, I need to move house. I'm like, okay. That, because you know what you need, because we'd ruled out all the physicals. She'd had gone through a whole battery of heart and lung tests, and there was nothing wrong with the heart and lungs, but she was on 2 A4 pages of medicines, from nothing to a battery of medicines. So because she'd got nothing physically or a heart, but yet she was just so breathless, we knew it wasn't a physical problem, because my background, I was a cardiac nurse. So we knew it wasn't a physical problem. So once we set aside, there's nothing physically wrong. It's like, okay, so it's either emotional, mental, or spiritual. And when I just said to her, what do you need? What do you need to do? What's the message? She went, I need to move house. So it's a totally emotional problem that's causing a huge physical disability in her life.
Oh, so true. Let's talk about the role that rest, stillness, and emotional honesty play in healing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Let's start talking about, because there's so many of us that don't get the proper rest. And I'm one in some respects, but there's different ways of rest. Sleep is one area, and there's sometimes when we can just disconnect for a while, where we can if be still, be quiet, just take some time to walk in nature. There's so many different sort of ways that we can do that, and that really can bring some emotional healing into our bodies.
For sure. And rest is about not using your brain, allowing your brain some downtime. So reading a book and watching the television or scrolling on the internet while you sat down is not rest, because your brain is still processing. So get out in nature, do some gardening, understand what you love to do and do more of it. I've just taken up mosaicing. I found out I'm actually quite good at it. And I'm starting to do more. And I'm thinking a little bit, but it's not like I'm not thinking a lot. It's more about making a pattern, but actually it's a visual process that I'm looking at. I'm not really thinking, well, that's not the right piece to go there. It's more like it's quite meditative. So for rest, absolutely, sleep is great. We live in Spain, so a siesta is also great too. A walk in nature, getting out in the garden, just sitting in a chair with a cup of tea or coffee or whatever you drink, and just watching outside, watching the birds, listening to the birds, just being in the room, being quiet, being still. being with yourself, checking in with yourself. How do I feel? Is there anywhere in my body that feels different? Have I got any pain? Have I got a sensation? Is there something going on that's pulling my attention to it? And just be with yourself.
Yeah, you're singing my song, lady. So you have a podcast, and it's called Mind Body Medicine for Self-Healers. What exactly is a self-healer?
It's somebody who understands the messages in their body and heals themselves naturally outside of pharmaceuticals. So some people will use supplements, some people will use diet, some people will just use mindset and do some emotional work, healing the past. Some people will reconnect in a more spiritual way. It covers a whole host of different things.
So, there's most people, or a very high amount of people who misunderstand about self-healing. And how can we explain it to them in a way that they can sort of look at it, that it's not an evil?
No. Here's something really easy. If you cut yourself, if you bang yourself, and it makes a bruise, we know our body is going to heal. We don't go running to the doctors with a little cut or a bruise, because we know that our body will heal it. We don't even think about it. We don't think, oh, that's going to heal. We just know instinctively that it's going to heal. So if we can heal a cut and a bruise, why can our body not heal anything else? It absolutely can. The key point to healing is it's about our beliefs. And as Henry Ford says, if you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right.
Either way, you're right. Absolutely.
Yes. So if you believe that your body can heal, you will heal on many levels. But if you believe you need doctors and pills, your body's not going to heal without doctors and pills.
So how do we move away from the fear of illness into empowerment and awareness and healing ourselves?
With the knowledge that your body heals, just the fact that you know that your body heals itself. And if you can trust and tune back into your body and listen to what it's saying through the messages, through the symptoms, and just ask yourself, what do I need? Why do I need to express this symptom now? And I'm not a lover of diagnosis, because when we get a diagnosis, it's like a computer program being installed into our brain. And then along with that comes our beliefs around that diagnosis and what we make it mean to our health. If we can let go and just go, there's a symptom of fatigue or chronic pain or a rash or a thyroid problem. What's the message in that? And just trust that we can finally work out and understand what our body's saying and act on that, whether it's clean up your diet, move yourself a bit more, sit in silence a bit more, meditate, just be grateful, reconnect to your inner self, and forgive and let go what's happened in the past, because we can't change it. We absolutely cannot, but we can reframe it and look at it as whatever happened for our highest good. So we've learned something. We've built resilience. We've built tenacity. We've built emotional intelligence, and look at what we've gained from what's happened to us rather than the negative of what's happened to us. As I say, we can't change it, but we can reframe it and change the way we look at it.
Wow. So true. And what do you think is, or let me ask you something, what is the biggest lesson that your own healing journey has taught you in your life?
That I dismissed myself and put everybody else's opinions and advice first. And I led my life living their opinions rather than listening to myself and doing what I wanted to do. And I think that when I came back into myself and became authentically me and stripped away all those layers that I'd put on to please other people, that's when true healing started. And understand that about our past, because I lived in victim mode for a long time, blamed my parents for everything that went wrong in my life. I blamed my parents. But they were doing the best they could. They didn't set out to try and ruin my life. They wanted to bring me up to be a good, upstanding citizen with good morals. But some of the things that were said and done, I held on to that and gave it a meaning that literally ran my life in autopilot. And once I understood what I was doing and that they had no malintentions, everything changed.
Wow. So I understand, that you have written several books, or you have written, is it in different languages?
It is. It's one book in different languages.
Different languages. Can you share with us what your book is primarily about, and, tell, because you've got so much to teach others. And I'd love to hear more about your book that you've written.
Thank you. It started as I was healing the depression that I was in, and I'd healed a whole slew of health problems leading up to that point. And up to being 41, I didn't know anything about natural self-healing. I was just like, I was a nurse in the medical model. And when you've got a symptom, you go to the doctor and a diagnosis and a cream, a pill, an intervention. That's all I knew. And once I'd started this journey of natural self-healing, of researching and finding out what our bodies and minds are capable of, I thought there must be other people like me out there that don't know this information. And I wanted to share it. So I wrote all the health problems I'd had, how I worked with them, and how I'd healed them. And then this little voice went, "Oh, who are you? You're not an author." Like, no, I'm not an author. I shut my computer down. 5 years it lived on my computer because that voice was, "Well, who are you?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know who I am." So anyway, I woke up one day with this voice in my head that you've got to write this book, and it's got to have lots of other people in it who've done like you've done and healed themselves. So I went, "Oh, has anybody healed themselves on the internet?" Searching social media. Lots and lots of people came forward. I'm like, wow, mind blown, because this is all new to me. And now there's all these other things being healed. In the end, I had a deadline, and 74 people wrote their own stories, healing cancer, Lyme, multiple sclerosis, ALS, motor neurone disease, as we call it, and so many other health problems. And they wrote what their diagnosis was and how they healed and what they did. And everybody's done something a bit different. I've got 4 people healed multiple sclerosis. They've all done something different. 2 people healed ALS, both done something entirely different. And it's the beliefs. Everybody believed that they could heal themselves when they set off on their own journey. So that it was born of my own healing, but I incorporated lots of other people's healing as well.
It's beautiful, and it's just so amazing what the mind can do.
Yes.
And I've seen it firsthand. I've done that in my own body, so I get it. And we have so much abilities that we totally underestimate ourselves.
Massively. But we're not taught how powerful we are.
Yeah. I think the world is sometimes scared to teach people how powerful they are.
Yes.
So if there was one thing that you wished every person understood about healing and the intelligence of the human body, what would it be?
I think it would be that A, we're not taught how powerful we are, and B, that your body is always healing itself. Every day it's going through detoxification processes, and it's repairing cells, and it's regenerating new cells and replacing cells. And every part of our body changes over different periods. Our eyes can regenerate over 2 days. But we're not taught all of this. So our body is always healing itself, and it wants to heal. And when we support it, it's a lot more efficient at healing. But the real key to healing is you have to believe that you can heal yourself naturally.
And what does that look like in some cases? Like you can't, I know we can't say for, so many things are different with each person.
So things are different, but things are the same. There's the physical, the mental, the spiritual, and the emotional. Those four pillars go across not just to stay healthy, but also in the healing mode. And so if we can look at, are we eating to nourish our body, or are we eating for an emotional cause? And that was huge when I healed bulimia nervosa, because I was just eating for emotions. So eat to nourish your body. Think about, is this food nourishing me or is it harming me? Stay hydrated, prioritize sleep, get some rest and downtime. Reconnect back with your inner voice. It's there and it's for you. Your ego will shout loudly. If you can ignore that and try and find the little whisper within you, that voice is there to help you. And look at the people you surround yourself with. Do you fit in with them? Or are you layering on new personalities to fit in with them? Can you be authentically yourself? And if not, you need a new tribe. You need to find people who are your tribe, who understand who you are authentically. And as we heal and learn and grow, people will leave our lives naturally. And we can see that as a failure. Oh, I'm losing friends, people are falling away. But actually, if we flip the way we think about that and think, these people are falling away because they resonate with the person I used to be, the unhealed version of me, which leaves all of this space for new people to come in who will resonate with the person I am authentically. So you'll have much better relationships. And if we can find a way to work with our past, to let go of it, to forgive if we can possibly bring ourselves to forgive, but if not, if we can just let go of holding on to it and know that the people who hurt us did what they did with the skills and knowledge they had at the time. It's not about blame. It's about understanding we're all on our own journey, and that was their journey and this is ours. And look at what skills and resilience and emotional intelligence you've built from what you've been through.
So important. What great information. Where can people find you? Well, here's the thing. Everybody's listening to such great information. And I know that people want to speak to you directly. So where can people possibly work with you, listen to your podcasts, and most importantly, find your book?
Thank you, Glenda. Just go to my website, www.sarahdawkins.com. Just my name.com.
And, that's the most important thing is people have to realize, it all starts with a conversation. And that's, so reach out to Sarah if you're interested in starting to look for ways to heal yourself, finding out, what is it, something that maybe you're dealing with in your own life, and maybe if there's something else that you're not even looking at. Because sometimes we don't see what's right in front of us, do we?
No, we don't see the wood for the trees. Absolutely. And it takes that outside person to listen to what you're saying, to go, there it is. That's what I'm hearing. And the person goes, oh, yes. Because to them, it's just run of the mill and they haven't picked it out as that's the important part.
Yeah, that's really the important part. And if we learn to, to slow down, stop and listen, a lot changes in life, doesn't it?
Hugely, yes. Life can be so much different to what it is now. We don't have to suffer. Symptoms are not an enemy. They're just simply messages.
Wow, this has been a really powerful conversation, because I think so many people are so disconnected from their own body and trying to tell themselves that everything's okay. Because especially as women, don't we say, we're fine?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I'm fine. I've got a bit of a headache, but I'll have a glass of water. I'll have a Tylenol, as you call it, or paracetamol, and we just carry on. And we just keep carrying on and pushing through rather than taking that time out and sitting down and going, what am I doing?
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest takeaways today is that healing isn't just about treating the symptoms.
No.
It's about listening, understanding, and reconnecting with ourselves on such a deeper level.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, your wisdom, and the incredible work that you're doing to help people heal themselves from the inside out. Because
Thank you, Glenda.
let's not start to listen. And to everyone listening to us today, this conversation resonates with you. Please share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. And thank you for joining us today on Let's Get Real. But most importantly, it's all about you and starting to learn what you need for yourself. And that really can be something just as easy as just putting yourself first. And sometimes that's all it really takes.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us today, Sarah. It was an absolute pleasure. And I hope that you can keep on giving so much incredible information to so many people, because we need this now more than ever before.
Absolutely. Thank you, Glenda.
Be well, and thank you.